Hey everybody, and welcome to this Q&A with myself, Jordan, and Melissa.
Hi, and we're from the Academy of Steel in Cardiff and Caerphilly in Wales.
Joining us today are Nick and Mike from the Academy of Historical Fencing in Newport and Bristol. How are you doing, guys?
Hi there, we're good.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, yes, and with us also.
We also have Rui from Portugal, just outside of Lisbon, from Espada Negra. How are you?
Doing well, thank you for asking.
You're actually telling us where your school is, because you said, first of all, it was under a bridge, but then the bridge,
collapsed, everything collapsed.
Yeah, and then you were chased out of your next place.
Yeah, went to our warehouse collapsed. Then
that's
collapsed.
right.
Basically, we've been chased.
And then there was a squash court. The squash court collapsed somehow. But you said you found a new venue.
Yes, we will be stationed in Seychelles, which is Lisbon South Bay, so from the south side of Lisbon, and we'll be starting there hopefully in September.
Excellent stuff. Also with us is Alex from Kraken Swords. How you doing, buddy?
In the US.
Oh yeah,
Florida,
US.
Yeah, pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, that's okay. What are you working on at the moment?
Swords galore. Mostly lots of back swords, broadswords, and spadroons, and few small sword variants as well.
Awesome stuff. Obviously we did a bit, we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I was saying to Alex, in a completely, I mean it as a compliment, he's a lot more handsome than I remember him being from Fight Camp. And I think it's purely down to the beard. I think the addition of the beard, like before, you were okay, right? But now you've got the beard, it's like a 10,
I really feel a bit, out of place because I don't have a beard.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah. You need a dwarf beard.
Yeah. I mean, I could cut like a bit of my like hair off here. We could get the Pritt stick, okay, cool.
I think I'm okay.
Let's talk a little bit about this month in HEMA, which is a project that we've all kind of been working on, but obviously, no, I let the cat out of the bag. I know I did. I know, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to, but I got a big mouth apparently. So,
now that you want.
Yeah, now I know.
Oh yeah, the project was kind of hush hush, but now it's not hush hush. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, we noticed that there are lots of different kinds of videos on YouTube. So all of us are putting out content, all kinds of interesting content. But often it's not always particularly well linked together. So, you might produce a video on a particular film you watched, or a review of a sword, or there's a new company's come out, and there's lots of stuff that kind of drops through the gaps. So I noticed there are quite a few sort of podcasts that do sort of videos as well about things completely unrelated to HEMA that do very well. And I thought it might be a good idea to sort of get together a sort of a small group of sort of instructor researchers and sword makers and sort of put us all together and produce a sort of a small format sort of magazine type show. Ideally once a month, but once a month-ish, we'll see how it goes. And we've obviously all got started on that, and the first version, or the first episode, has been recorded and it's being put together now.
Yeah, I'm pumped for it. I'm pumped, so pumped I let the cat out of the bag, and I'm not sorry. I'm a little bit sorry. When I read the email, I was like, oh, was I not meant to talk about it? Oh, no, I've been telling everybody. I told my mum. It's
going to give us a really good... It's going to give us a really good chance to talk about a lot of different topics, because we can each pit in different subjects and all different stuff that we can put together into, almost like a Top Gear of HEMA kind of thing. Maybe not quite their budget, but...
What do you mean, not quite? Did you say there was a budget?
We've got swords, so, there is that. But yeah, it means we can cover all different things, the different specialisms each of us have got, and different passions that we've got, so we can cover all different topics, and also talk about some of the stuff that doesn't really come up in our own personal videos. Like, we never talk about sort of products that just released sort of, last week, last month, new stuff, new companies, whatever else, or new events. That's kind of stuff that we can cover in that section, which generally we don't cover anywhere else. So yeah, good scope.
And we've been contacted by, even though it's secret, we've discreetly put out feelers to people to see if they would be interested, and the response is very positive.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what Alex does, because I watch things like Forged in Fire and I watch things like Forged in Steel where they make stuff but they can't use it. You know, they're like, it will cut. And I'm like, nah, but will it? Sorry, go on. What were you saying?
Oh, the memes galore on, they make great swords and then the test cutters bend them around the target.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and like, because you use them as well, that I think that's like, I'm really excited to see, you know, what comes out of that. Shall we get stuck into some questions?
Yeah,
sure.
We've got one from Fury's Own Dagger from Instagram. Just going to say that's an awesome name, right, Nick?
That's pretty good.
Fury's Own Dagger.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, so like I love during the promo that you did for this Q&A video where you were like, and there's Melissa and Jordan and they do Fury. That's great.
That's quite positive for Nick.
How do you teach timid people to be more assertive, aggressive fencers?
Yeah, so that is actually one of the hardest things I would say to do, because it's something so natural to the way a person necessarily is, not just what they've trained. The first thing I would say is just to make them as comfortable as possible with everything. I found the more fun people are having, fun that timid people are having, the more they get into it and the more aggression that they build in. So it's not easy to do, but I think they just need, from what I've seen, regular sparring partners that don't abuse them and allow them to have a bit of fun. And as they have fun more, they relax more and get a bit more aggression in them. I think that's generally what I found so far.
Yeah, one of the first things that we tend to do when someone comes along is give them a sword and soften me. Just give them a synth and say, hit me in the head. It takes them quite a while to actually hit you properly and not just do the whole, no, actually hit me in the head, I'll be fine. It takes a while for people, a few strikes until they're like, oh, I can actually hit you and you're okay. You're not crying. And then, I'll try it back and they'll realize that it actually doesn't hurt when you get hit on the head when you're wearing, proper equipment. So, it's a slow thing, but eventually they start to get a bit more aggressive.
I am pretty high praise for aggressive fighters. I'm fairly aggressive myself, and I think the way that I reinforce that the most is I tend to drill a lot of arm attacks with my students, a lot of thigh attacks against them, trying to force ripostes that need to come quite quickly. And when they do hit me with them, I jump for joy at them for taking the initiative to hit me back on such a quick motion. And I think that gives them some incentive to feel comfortable with quick openings and quick ripostes and building aggression rather than being afraid of it. I tend to treat it as a bonus. I'd rather teach patience than aggression any day.
Yeah. There's a fight between you and Nick at Fight Camp, and I think you guys are fighting in the ring. I think it's on the Academy of Historical Fencing YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I think that's where I saw it, and that is an awesome fight.
That's a good plug.
Yeah. You see what I did there? Yeah, no, but it's a really good fight. I really enjoyed watching that.
Fighting with cutlasses in the rain is awesome.
Yes,
yeah, I used one of your cutlasses actually. It's the one with the sort of figure of 8 guard. And
the 1804 one, yeah.
Oh, it was so Nick and I had a fight with them. I think you had one, I had one when we were sort of sparring with those, and it was great because I really got into kind of like heavier sword fighting in reenactment, and it felt like one of my reenactment swords, but I had the hand protection as well. So I was like, I'm never gonna die, and then
reality kicked in.
The floor with me. So I was like, I put pay to that theory. But up until that moment, it was cool. So
this question is from Timbo Boy. How do you deal with people who come from other clubs? do you advise them to do your interpretation, or do you allow them to keep theirs while training? Rui, what are your thoughts?
So when it comes to having people from other clubs, we try to be as respectful as we can towards them and what they've learned. If they're coming to train with us for a long period of time, so if they're not just visiting, I mean, they're going to follow what we teach, unless they have something new to bring. If they're proficient in something, if they want to bring something new to the table, we sometimes try to organize, okay, you're in charge of the class today, show us what you got, show us what you can do. You want to share something new with the rest of the class? Because I mean, we're mostly focused on Capo Ferro Rapier and Military Saber. So if someone wants to bring Longsword to the table and just say, okay, this is what I do, this is what we train at the other club, yeah, sure, go for it, present your stuff and be fine with it. If they're coming to visit, again, we try to arrange things depending on the person that's coming to visit. If they want to show us something, again, show us, and in sparring, they do whatever they want to do, really. So we normally divide things like sparring, so material, so practice, and then a little bit of sparring in the end.
There's kind of two parts, really. There's the kind of the training with the club, and then there's the sparring with the club. And of course, every club is going to be different. If you look at our, say, our Bristol school, which is can be pretty monstrous when COVID isn't happening. But for something like that, if somebody new comes along, when we're actually going through techniques, if we're going through British Military Saber, we'll be all doing British Military Saber. If somebody comes in and they're doing something else, that's absolutely fine, but the class is doing British Military Saber, or it'll be working on Myers Rapier. If they've got something they want to talk to us about and they'd like to incorporate it, that'd be great, although that is quite a rarity. When it comes to sparring, there's no rule. Well, okay, that's not true. There are rules, but there are no rules in terms of the technique or the style that you can use, and mix and match as much as you like, as you probably should.
I've got a question here from Swords Are for Nerds on Instagram. How important are tournaments to you, Rui? What do you think?
They're not.
Cool, Alex.
They're not.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, they're fun, but they're not important.
No, fair enough. All right, Rui, do you want to expand on that a little bit? Are you just not?
No, I mean, I've had my fair. I mean, when I said I've had my fair share, I've competed in a couple of local tournaments here in Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're fun, but they're not really my thing. It's not what I train for. It's not what I want my people training for, even though everyone is free to attend whichever and pursue whichever things makes them happy. But for me, it's just not one of the main things that I'm training for. It's fun to sometimes go out and test myself under pressure, see if the techniques that I've been practicing for, if they work under certain stress scenarios or the situations, and then just try to also see how other people are fencing. Although when on these tournaments, most of the time I just find people that are just focused on fencing towards the point, and that's something that really, okay, fair enough, yeah, sure, I'll give it to you. It's
absolutely, yeah.
My overall experience with tournaments, not always. I've had some really good tournament experiences, but overall, I would say it's almost entirely point chasing. Where people are just like, they're going for the softest, quickest touch. They don't care about after blows or parries. They don't even include that in their attack. They're like, I touched your finger, the fight's over.
Yeah, I'm the greatest swordsman that ever lived.
Yeah, the greatest swordsman.
Yeah, they're just there they've like tapped you on the fingernail and they're there doing the quickening, like, you know.
A tournament done well could be so much fun. They just they do take some effort to put on, and I don't think that effort is often respected. And so that's basically it.
If you get people taking the right mindset into it, it's actually really good fun. So like the one we did at Kings of the North, which Rui was there, everybody went in with the right attitude, and actually it was really good and really good fun. But that's kind of a rarity. And so I don't like the, specifically the training to win tournaments mentality, because it always changes things so far from what we're really training for.
Some questions from YouTube. The first one's going to be from...
That's a mouthful.
Jose Vicente Garcia Moreno.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, I hope I, pronounced that okay.
Proof.
How are you managing fencing during lockdown? Are you sparring at all? Just drilling? Cheers. Now, we're relatively lucky because
I get to fight my wife.
yeah.
Yes.
Yay.
Put that on a banner.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Even better. And we only started up 2 weeks ago. We've had 2 sessions so far, and we can't spar. There are the national restrictions or the law, and then there are the restrictions put by the place that we train at. So we haven't been able to train outside yet in England as a club, although our individuals have been able to do things as sort of friends or family doing their own thing. But as a club, we haven't been able to spar outdoors. And in indoors, the restrictions are so great that we could only really spar by sort of gingerly tapping tips at quite a distance with the longest swords that we have. So there's no sparring there. So we've started off with, in some ways, it's quite good, great for beginners. We've gone right back to the basics. We're working on footwork, and we're working on body mechanics, cutting mechanics, all the kind of stuff you can do either without a sword, or without a sword, and often without a partner. And a lot of this stuff, and it is core basic stuff, but working through, getting your cuts and your footwork correctly sort of put together, and even just loosening the body out, because so many of us have just not been able to get much done over throughout this whole COVID business. And people's bodies they're like sort of the Iron Giant, just been sat there for ages, just rusting away, and sort of the joints aren't moving. I assume anyway, it might just be me. But,
my first day back, I fell down on the floor after a full day of sparring. I just absolutely laid out.
I've got a question here, right. So if you guys go to my YouTube channel, it's an essay, and I love this. I have many questions. But as a rule, I figured we'd ask like one from each person, and I picked what I figure is the most interesting question, which is like, what, if any, material from the old treatises and manuals from the past regarding, can people offer regarding conditioning? So a lot of people are doing, conditioning at the moment. Is there anything in the historical manuals that we look at that can offer kind of conditioning exercises and stuff like that? Nick, what do you reckon?
So as a rule, most manuals don't talk about conditioning. They talk about technique. The British military stuff like Roath, for conditioning, it's really, really basic. It's just, you go through your cutting mechanics, which is just how to cut and recover in one, how to go through the 6-cut drill, and how to do the solo, basically cut to parry drills. And that is considered the conditioning, which, it's as much commitment to muscle memory as anything else, but of course you do it enough and that's conditioning in itself. So, that's all that got mentioned. At the same time, we know from an account in 1815, when the British Army were ordered to learn the new style that was being introduced, and they were sent to Cambrai to learn swordsmanship, and they trained 6 days a week for 6 weeks, and I think they trained for, I believe it was 6 hours per day. So you want to talk about conditioning. If you train like that, that's going to condition you.
I know that Talhofer mentions so lifting and throwing stones, leaping and dancing, wrestling as a form of conditioning there. So that's obviously slightly earlier, and that's kind of it's in a small couplet, which, if I'm not mistaken, is like advice that he's giving to a patron who's asked him for a manual. See, I can do German. Hey, all right, there we are.
You can do Google.
That was it. I just Googled that German couplet. I was like, where is it? Sorry, just super quickly, because I forgot to mention the person who gave that question. It was 2008 David Kang.
I think John deliberately gave me all the questions with difficult to pronounce names, so you wouldn't have to worry about pronouncing them.
Yeah.
So this one's from Feigir Gottriksson.
Feigir Gottriksson.
Wasn't he on Games Workshop? Warhammer for character.
I don't know.
Score
Sorry
track.
if I mispronounced your name there. What do you think about double-headed axes?
Love them.
I think they look cool.
They're good on Skyrim.
They're good on Skyrim, yeah. I'm not the right person to ask, though.
You tempted to make one? Alex, you tempted to make one?
A double-headed axe?
Yeah.
Make one, Alex.
A Kraken axe?
No, I have to pass on double-headed axe. I prefer one that I can lift straight up in the air to be brought back down again without splitting my own head in half. That's just me. That's just me and my own personal viewpoint on my head.
We'll move on quickly to this question, which was sent by Marco Stupa. Is putting too much speed or power into a cut bad for the efficacy of the cut? Yeah, I'll answer that right now. Too much by definition is more than you need. So yeah, it's just like
you've answered that one quite succinctly there.
Yeah.
I'm not even quite sure how you can define too much speed, and if there is such a thing, I would like to have it myself.
Ditto.
If my normal speed is 100%, but for somehow I can do a 120% cut purely down on speed, well, in that case, if I can do it, then it's still 100%. So I'm not quite sure how you can have too much speed in a cut. In terms of too much power, obviously, as you say, you need as much power as you need for what you're doing. But in terms of putting too much power in, well, it slows you down. If you want too much power, the body has to put the power out in some way. You don't want to use any more than you have to.
I think with regard to speed, as long as the mechanics are correct and the edge alignment is correct, then you can't really have too much speed. I think the problem arises when people focus so much on speed, they focus on being fast, that all of a sudden their edge alignment is completely off, their mechanics are completely off, and they're just hitting you with a flat. It might be a fast slap with a flat, but it's still the flat, and it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you get that a lot when people that kind of bounce around, and they are fast. They're bunny hopping around and they're slapping you with the sword and things like that. But it's not good.
Yeah. Once again, my question with a tricky name. I think it's Francois
Perrault.
I don't speak French, so yeah. I'm starting my study of French saber from scratch, and I'd like to know if there are any resources out there I could find useful. Alex.
Okay, French resources. I know the counterpoint manual, the contrapoint manual is pretty common. I don't know what French sources are really out there other than that. I know lots of French small sword sources, but their saber manuals seem to be few and far between, at least ones with decent descriptions and interpretations inside them.
Great.
I know two of them, actually. So Counterpoint, yes. And also Victor Markland made a translation of Saint-Martin, I believe, which has a section on saber later down the line. So he starts off with, I believe it's foil at the time it was used, and then he goes on to explain also a little bit later down the line regarding saber. I tried to delve into it, but I couldn't grab a hold of the book myself, sadly. But basically, these are the two ones that I would recommend if he's looking into Napoleonic French treatises, at least.
Jaron Kisser or Kaiser asks.
That's not Kaiser.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm bad with names. I have a question. What the hell is the symbol of the AHF? Looks like two lizard birds back to back.
Can I go with this one?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a two-headed eagle, is what it is. But I quite like the idea of two lizard birds back to back. We could actually retcon it because we don't have an official history. So maybe it is two lizard birds back to back. But in terms of why we chose it, you have to go back to the sort of into the kind of the mists of time. So when we started the HF, and we had to decide what we wanted to do, what we wanted to be. Because before that, we were basically a private members-only sort of fighting club. So we just all turned up and fought for a few hours, and eventually we decided to buy fencing masks. So that's how we started. So we looked at kind of the traditions that we were interested in, and it was a mixture of sort of Germanic sort of sources from the sort of Holy Roman Empire, going down to kind of the North Italian states. And the two-headed eagle obviously is is associated directly with the Holy Roman Empire. If you go to if you go to Vienna, you can see on their magnificent church right in the center, they've got it slap bang. Assuming it's not covered in scaffolding again, but you can see it in the middle. And it's a symbol that's been used with the old Roman Empire for looking, the two-headed eagle. It's looking east and it's looking west. So it's sort of, we chose it because we thought it kind of encompassed the whole sort of fencing tradition. It's a relatively simple design, although Nick's improved it over time, and maybe we could incorporate the lizard bird idea as well to really ramp it up.
Speaking of Nick improving the designs and everything, the T-shirts that you've been putting out they're pretty awesome. Where can people get those?
Yeah. So they're available on Redbubble through our Redbubble store, which is Swordfight UK on Redbubble.
So next we have Matt Fick. Which historical fencing master could you each defeat in a duel with a specialty weapon? Okay,
What?
Rui, I'm going to ask you first.
Oh, well, Capoferro's out of the question.
He'd kick your ass, dude.
He'd kick my ass. Or he'd mop the floor with me. I mean, I would certainly try, I would die trying at least, either Roeth or Angelo. I would try, I would die trying, I would die a glorious death.
Angelo is a whole family dynasty.
All of them. All of them.
He's Portuguese, he's going to die gloriously. And then we'll come over and help him.
I think the question should be, which one would you rather die to? Because I think
Right.
I don't know. I think some are better than others.
They probably do. Mare, I would take on Mare.
Alex, who would you take on?
Silver.
Yeah.
I don't like him. And if I win the fight, I'd be super happy.
Yeah, but then if you lost, you'd be like, oh no, I lost this.
I didn't say it wasn't a gamble. But that has the biggest payout for me. The book never gets written. The Silver book never gets written because he died in a duel one day beforehand.
So I take Saviolo, simply because Saviolo is, I think, the reason Silver hated Rapier so much, because I think Silver was perhaps right because he was judging Rapier based off of Saviolo. So Saviolo was living in England and teaching. He's an Italian, but teaching in England in the late 16th century, and his style is just whack, essentially. And the people that practice it will hate me for this. But simply put, he's using like some kind of fairly heavy rapier, so like a decent long side sword, basically. And he uses so many body voids and offhand work against cuts. And frankly, I would cut and thrust someone like that to ribbons. So like most masters I would never want to take on, but I think Saviolo, I think I'd be quite happy with.
Mike?
Whoever was the actual person behind 133, like in the damn good thrashing.
I was actually going to go for that one as myself. I was like, the head is usually quite fast.
To be honest, it's a bit mean, really, because it's a master of 133. That's like a sort of somebody, I don't know, a rally driver that's really good at playing Mario Kart. It's in terms of a fencing system, it doesn't get much in the way of a thumbs up from me. So whoever wrote it, I'd happily have a fight with them, and I don't really mind what I use either. I'd use a dagger, that'd be fine.
I like the system. It's a good basic. It gives you a lot of the basics, and because it's so early, there's you've got centuries of knowledge built up after it. Even if you're using the same weapon set, you might have a good chance because you might be using their weapons, but you've got centuries of knowledge that you could theoretically, well, what we have, learned on how to use different kinds of weapons you can apply with that weapon. So might have the best chance there just because they don't know that knowledge.
That's new.
That's new. What are you doing? Next question. From Esgrima Zativa.
You did it.
Can you foresee any of the sword arts within HEMA ever overtaking modern fencing in popularity? Let's start with Alex.
So, I hope so. But I think that's Olympic fencing is probably a pretty high bar to look for overtaking something. It's Olympic fencing is super popular despite being fairly niche. But on the other side of that, I mean, 10 years ago, HEMA was not even a fraction of what it is now, and it only gets bigger and more popular every year, probably as a factor, you know, like it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger on a like an exponential level. So yeah, maybe 10 years, 10, 15 years, it could be running head to head with something like Olympic fencing, if it continues to grow as it has been growing. I mean, you've got some celebrity people taking part in HEMA events, sponsoring HEMA events and stuff like that. I mean, that's new. So I mean, that I take that as a sign that that it's on the rise even further.
Right.
It also has, I mean, I hope it will, as Alex said. But it also has to do a lot with politics in a way, into how it works within each country, has its own rules, has its own rule sets, has its own federations. Also all sorts of legal mumbo jumbo. Popularity wise, I mean, I have no doubt that in a couple of, not a couple of years, but in maybe a decade, 15 years, yeah, maybe it will be butting heads with, or at least holding hands, I like to think, with sport fencing. I don't like butting heads. It may happen. If it will overtake, time will tell, really.
Lauren Ings asks Alex, this is a question to you. Do you think making swords has helped further your understanding of weaponry? If so, how? And I'm going to link this into, there was also a comment on Facebook. Iron Scott asks, again, specifically for you, Alex, popular man, it's the beard.
Yeah, they want a sword, that's what it is.
Yeah. You're a competitor, but also a swordsmith. Do you find that your sparring experience informs your smithing over, say, researching examples and texts? What do you think?
Yes, to both, actually. And I've got quite a few historic examples as well, to go with how they're supposed to handle when you're sparring. And there's certain compromises that you have to make for a good sparring sword to handle like an original. For example, a lot of good training swords have spatulated, fluted, or rolled tips. Well, guess what? The historic ones don't, which means the tips are always going to be lighter on a historic sword than a HEMA trainer. So you just kind of have to adjust the proportions of the guard and the pommel to accommodate the tip being fast, despite the sword maybe being a few grams heavier than its historic counterpart, as long as it handles the same way. And as far as cut mechanics and thrust mechanics, definitely. As soon as you start to handle lots and lots of swords, you get a feel for their advantages. You're like, oh wow, the tip on this one is narrow, but it is not light. Like say a mortuary sword, it'll be lighter in the tip, but a broadsword will be much heavier in the tip. And then you realize that certain maneuvers and for example, like thrusting in tierce with a broadsword is quite hard because you can't really roll your wrist out, and you can't open up your hands to let the blade slip. Whereas anything with a slightly larger guard and a lighter tip, you can start in the outside guard, apply pressure in the bind, and thrust right over the top into the shoulder. I figured a lot, I mean, stuff like that's in the manuals, but a lot of it I figured out by handling the swords that I make and buy. So I would say that it works both ways. The fencing and in a way collecting antique swords and making them all kind of feeds into each other. What makes a good sword, what makes it strong, and what makes it good for fencing. So yeah, I guess that all kind of plays together, honestly.
Next question from Dustin Frank. Are there any translations, interpretations of Bolognese sword and buckler you can recommend for someone who is wanting to start studying that style during lockdown? Rui, do you have any recommendations?
I have a friend, so my colleague at the club is actually studying Marozzo, and I believe there is a translation. It's Bolognese, so it's sword and buckler. So I think Nick also was using a form or two, right? I mean, these are the one that I know because he's studying, and he keeps pestering me about it. Just like not my cup of not my cup of tea. There we go.
So this is Manciolino, he's a contemporary of Marozzo. And personally, I think Manciolino, and many people share this opinion, is much more accessible than Marozzo. And so this is the one I'd recommend. You can buy it on Amazon. It's a good translation. And yeah, I'd recommend it. I mean, frankly, the Italian terminology at the time is absolutely absurd. But then, I can't change that.
You can, and you should.
I do. When I teach Manciolino, I change everything into English, and that's especially important for us because when I teach Manciolino, it's normally the paired weapon stuff, and then Mike teaches Maya rapier, which is basically the same sword. So we need to be able to teach our students from both sources without having to change language because that would be absurd. So yeah, we do it all in English. It's quite easy to move it over.
There's a question here which I'm going to kind of caveat it before we start, because this is something that I have to do with all my students before we do anything to do with dagger and things like that, which is ultimately, I'll read out the question and then I'll kind of go through the spiel. Matthew Coates asks, what HEMA discipline or what HEMA disciplines are most relevant for modern self-defense against a street assailant armed with a knife or some other street weapon? First of all, I would just say, and I've done like modern day self-defense and Krav Maga and martial arts like that. And anybody who is an edged weapon specialist, whatever that means to you, will tell you, if anybody pulls a knife on you, and you can get out of there, just get out of there. If you can, if you can de-escalate the situation for whatever reason, if it's a case of mistaken identity or, or whatever, I tell my students, if somebody comes up to you with a knife and says, give me your wallet, just hand it over. Because what have you got in there? You've got, like a Costa card with one stamp away from that coffee. It's not worth dying over. Just de-escalate the situation if you can, and just make sure your hands are in front of you. And like you're looking for the exit, just get out of there.
No.
But that being said, Mike?
I don't think any of them for a start. None of our schools, I know ours in particular, I suppose that everybody speak for themselves, but as far as our school's concerned, we don't run a school to teach people self-defense. In terms of self-defense, there's going to be two simple rules. The first one, as you say, is you bug out, always bug out, and also try to avoid most of the situations if you can. So that's being sensible in where you're walking, who you're walking with. So situational awareness, that's all much more important. In terms of if you've got to fight, then fancy techniques and all the rest of the crap, you just got to do the minimal amount of damage to then run the hell away. If it's stamping on their feet and hitting them in the face repeatedly, hitting them with your car keys if you've got car keys. In terms of the rest of the system, you're probably going to be so busy thinking about the lock that you practiced a few months ago that you're gonna get shivved repeatedly and die. Because if you watch any videos to do with where people are being attacked by knives, it is invariably nothing like what you have been practicing. And of course, when we practice, we're not practicing for self-defense. It's part of the treaties. So this thing, you bring the arm up, you lock it, doing all this stuff. That's great. They've probably got you, thrown you to the floor, and they just keep stabbing you until you can't move anymore. So I wouldn't recommend any of the things we teach for defending yourself. It's bug out always, and if you can't bug out, then just go full animal until you can get out.
Alex, what's it like in Florida in terms of muggings or?
Yeah,
that sounds really negative though. What's it like in terms of muggings?
I was interrupted by Melissa doing the pew pew.
So yes, we pew pew here. Actually, our sheriff is a big gun fan, and he tells all the residents in this county that if someone accosts you or breaks into your house, to blast them back out of the house.
So they all carry guns then?
No, cannons, blast them out of the house.
Yeah, out, all the way out. He says this is an actual quote from the news. Grady Judd, our sheriff, says, if someone breaks into your house, blast, not shoot, but blast them back out, all the way out of the house. So you're going to need like several shotguns to pull this off.
Question is from Lauren Iddens. Favorite Hollywood sword fight scene?
Did you say favorite? Favorite Hollywood, and let's just widen it to not necessarily Hollywood, but film sword fight scene. And I think my favorite one is The Princess Bride. Oh, I didn't see that one coming at all.
I know, it's one of the best.
Just swept in and took that one off the table.
I'm taking it, that one's mine.
That's why you went first. That's just mean, though.
Yeah, I know, right?
All right, Nick.
Okay, so obviously fight scenes in movies are generally bad. So, but my pick would be pretty much any fight in The Mask of Zorro from 1998, Antonio Banderas.
Oh, that's a good one.
Simply because actually a lot of it is actually legit technique, but mainly it's just every single sword fight scene is just so fun because it's so well choreographed and there's just so much entertaining stuff happening. So it's believable and a bit silly, tongue-in-cheek, bit of fun, but there's also cause and effect as well. So, I think every single fight scene in it is just hugely, hugely enjoyable, whilst actually being somewhat reasonably accurate to what you'd expect of a kind of saber squadron fight in the mid-19th century. So yeah, that gets my pick.
All right, Alex.
That's actually tough because my favorite movie sword fight is like a really obscure scene in The Count of Monte Cristo. Like the what's his name? I can't remember the actor's name. The skinny baddie in the movie. He's dueling some guy because there was a slight, he said a slight against him or something, and he's like, they're having a small sword duel and they're having really good back and forth, and then Guy Pearce is the actor's name, and then and Guy Pearce is pulling like these small disengage to big disengage to small disengage to big disengage, and he's just walking around the other guy, and then he finally just does big disengage and the thrust in the chest, and I'm like, that's how you kill someone with a small sword, no doubt. So for such an obscure small little fight, it actually is my favorite movie fight scene.
It's a good fight.
All right, Rui.
Anything from The Duelists. Pick your poison. Literally, and it's not only my favorite movie or one of my favorite movies, but anything from The Duelists. Except maybe the fight scene in I think they were underground, or the indoors fight scene with the saber. I didn't like that one much. It was gruesome and they were pretty tired, but I mean the fights with small swords were lovely, and the first duel with the saber was also very lovely. I mean, anything from that movie is excellent.
You've all gone for historical films, haven't you? Or historical fantasy films. I go sci-fi, and none of that sequel crap. I go for the original Star Wars series. I go for the second and third films. And there are very few sword fights in the original Star Wars series. In fact, there's technically 4, but although one of them's not really a fight. But anyway, the sword fights in Empire and Return of the Jedi. Neither show any incredible technique, but I think in terms of storytelling, they do the same job that The Princess Bride does. Is the technique doesn't have to be perfect. It's all about the characters and the motivations, and they've got their story in Princess Bride, and in the 2 Star Wars films, as in Empire and Return of the Jedi, they've got the music. The cinematography is awesome. There's a lot of silhouette work. It's not ridiculously fast. It's not like Blade, where it's just a guy going like this, or that could be the prequel trilogy. It's just people flying around, jumping around, doing silly stuff. It's two people that's for large parts of the fights, because it's the same two people fighting. They don't even want to kill each other for large parts of the fight. It's got sort of a passion and a storytelling that these sequels don't even understand what those words mean.
I'm going to go with, there's one which is quite obscure. It's called Alatriste.
Not obscure. That's got the only.
Oh, no, okay, fine. You guys probably know it, but I'm not sure. You know, and there are some great fight scenes in that, which I absolutely love for their brutality. I might also, I'm not sure, like, as I'm not sure which one in that film is my favorite fight, but yeah, I like them all. I love the bit at the end where they're kind of running in underneath the pikes, and they're sort of fighting each other, but then they're like running up to the pikemen, and they're, you know, and they're cutting at their Achilles tendons, and it's just so horrible.
The rapier fights in that are some of the best, or probably the best rapier fights put on film. They're really good.
Gabrielle.
Oh, Gabriel.
Oh, Gabriel. Greetings from Brazil.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Hello.
My question is, what is the best way to improve your fitness for HEMA? Let's say I want to train for 1 hour every day. Is it better to just practice with a sword, drills, and etc.? Or should I also do weight training or something like that? Supposing my goal is only to get in better shape for HEMA and I don't care about the looks.
You should care about the looks.
You should care about the
dazzle your opponent. You step into the arena and they're like, oh no, I can't. You know, I can't contend with that.
Full Spartacus.
Okay, fair enough. Nick, you and I have talked about this. Like, kettlebells are pretty good. I mean, like, obviously, the best way to improve is just through fencing. You know, I mean, nothing prepares your muscles or your body more for fencing better than fencing does. I think that, but we've talked about kettlebells, which is pretty good for isolating certain muscles, which is good for developing that. And I'd also say skipping. I do a lot of skipping, and what I do is I do it in intervals of 30 seconds, kind of like nice and slow, and then 30 seconds as fast as I can, because I'm trying to work on my burst energy. Because, you know, when you're fighting, a lot of the time it's like it can slow down and you're sort of out of measure, and you're picking your moment, and then it's like all hell breaks loose. And a lot of people get into the habit of like holding their breath, or as Mike said earlier, just going for one hit and backing off and doing stuff like that. But, you know, if you're really getting in there and you're throwing a series of cuts, and it's, you know, it's a fast exchange, you're going to want that burst energy. So I'd say, and probably body weight exercises as well. Things that don't really involve a lot of weight is good. I mean, if you want to build mass in order to have more in the bind, more presence in the bind, you can absolutely do weightlifting. But I'd say that if you're just working on getting yourself fit, if you're just working on getting yourself strong, just do stuff with your body weight, like lunges, because that will prepare you for doing footwork and staying in a kind of low stance for long periods of time. And again, fencing, just do a lot of fencing, and it'll work on your looks. It'll work on your looks anyway. Nobody looks sexier than when they've got a sword in their hand. So yeah,
I mean, if you could do just an hour of basically fencing based exercise per day, that would be the best thing you could do. But it will get mind-numbingly boring, just solo drills for like an hour every single day. So I don't do that. I use row machine, kettlebells, bodyweight exercises, some dumbbells. I got battle ropes, a heavy bag, and some pads focus pads for doing boxing exercises. So basically anything that isn't just a mind-numbing, I have to do the 6-cut drill again. So that's my system. It's just a few days a week is anything I can do at home like that.
When all this started, I just vowed myself to, okay, now I'm in terrible shape. I'm not going to allow for this pandemic and for not have a venue to make things even worse. I mean, round is a shape, but come on, it's not really the shape you want to be in. So I just started doing lots of solo drills, lots and lots and lots of solo drills, lunges, going back and forth. I mean, going through the movements, going through everything with sword, without a sword, trying to gain stamina on the arm, trying to gain more, you know, lung capacity, and you're just building cardio. And recently I looked at myself and I was like, no, not enough. So I started adding more, like going on YouTube, finding a couple of videos, doing some weight exercises just to change a couple of things in my body that I wasn't happy with. But I'd say, yeah, mostly just fencing exercises, solo drills, you know, footwork, always on your footwork, and cardio, as Alex said. That's the holy trinity.
That can go on a t-shirt as well. One of the interesting things I think with swordsmanship is even if you have a reasonable understanding of a fencing system, I think a relatively unfit person can still put on a reasonably good showing for themselves, as opposed to a lot of other sort of martial arts and sort of sportive exercises. Obviously you can't fight for hours, but you're practicing for sort of one at a time. But in terms of improving your fencing, I think the cardio is always the most important, and not just so you don't get tired. It's there's the cardio, and as Jordan said at the start, the breathing. I find when you get new people, we often get new people turn up and they do loads of cardio. They are super fit. They sort of stand next to me and they're a slender reed, next to me. Maybe they're running, climbing, doing all kinds of stuff. Basically, it's exercise they enjoy, and they're just doing it all the time. But they have a fight, and 90 seconds later, they almost can't breathe. They're almost passing out, and it's because they're tense. Yeah, they're tensed. They're stressed. They don't breathe when they do anything. And I find you can have somebody with mediocre fitness that's relaxed, and of course you're relaxed because you're experienced, which is a little bit of a pain in the backside, because to be experienced you have lots of practice to do it. But once you're experienced, and I find, you know, like me and Nick, we can have a fight and we can fight till the place closes. We'll just go on for hours. It's not a problem because we're relaxed. Yeah, we get a little bit tired and we're sweating and we need to take on a bit of water, but you can just keep going for ages.
Yeah, we did that once, like the day before Christmas, didn't we? Nobody turned up because it was, you know, Christmas Eve, and we fought anyway, and we we sparred for an hour and a half.
But you just can, and I'm not at the gym all the time, and I'm basically the extent of my main non-fencing exercise is getting out and walking the dog as much as possible, and doing cutting drills all the time, including when I'm walking the dog.
This person, okay, Cal Meto Gun. Hang on, Cal Meto
Top Gun.
Call me Top Gun.
It's all one word. Call me Top Gun.
Call me 2P Gun, maybe.
Spaces. Call me Top Gun 5451. Sort yourself out, I tell you. A bloody better YouTube name. Anyway, question. What is the hardest style to learn and why? Which is the most physically demanding?
Any of the styles that require excessive amounts of coordination. So anything that's using sort of two swords can be more difficult to learn. They're not impossible. They're not really difficult, but they are more difficult to learn than a single weapon. Hardest style. I could just say the physically demanding, because I can get that done quite quickly. Shield work. Anybody that hasn't done shield work doesn't realize that no matter how light the shield is, it's a lot heavier than you think. And if for one fight, it's fine. But as you guys know, you have to stand in the line for half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours while it's raining, waiting for something to happen. Just holding the shield up, if it's not strapped to you in some way, especially punch grip shields, they destroy your arm. And you really need to practice and work on that. Otherwise, you can physically can't even hold the thing up, let alone lift it to where it needs to go.
I'd say any of the systems that use a offhand weapon. I agree on the shields being rough too, especially on the physical demand on using a shield, especially very aggressively. But anything fast, side sword and dagger, saber, and anything in your offhand is hard. Or maybe something that you wouldn't see very much, maybe like a hatchet and a dagger or something, I'd imagine it either just turns into a bash fest or it's just athleticism at its peak if you don't want to take a hit. I think most of the dominant sword styles are actually basically designed for anybody. So I mean, like the hardest one would be the one that you're the least flexible for, you know. So I mean, like for me, I find Italian rapier awesome, but my legs don't like it. So I'd say that one is the roughest. I love it, but my legs don't like it that much. So I would say that's challenging, just because it works my legs in a way that I don't enjoy.
Most physically demanding, I would say yes, shield. Anything with a shield. My left arm, my poor feeble left arm. I took a course in Viking fighting with Jasper Welsma. He's Dutch, and I went in the Swiss Blades, and he taught me a little bit about Viking shield, and I was like, nope. Never again shall I hold a shield, because it was just too much on my poor little arm. No.
My experience with people, the one they have the hardest with is actually rapier. When I say rapier, I mean the kind of like early 17th century big beastly rapiers, like Capoferro type rapiers. And the simple reason is, there are a couple of reasons. One is it's heavy. Is, you know, if you get something representative of Capoferro, you're talking like 1.3, 1.4 kilos in one hand, that you're holding extended from the body. So whether you're a newcomer or a longsword fence or whatever else, they really struggle with the rapier for quite a long time, just from the sheer weight alone. And then on top of that, if you practice the style of, say, Capoferro, it's a lot of sort of single time counters, and the timing required for it and the technique is one of the hardest things to not necessarily understand, but apply well in a fight. So I think people struggle with it early on. And in that case, I find actually, I don't do this personally, but I do find that people pick up rapier and dagger quicker than single rapier, because even though you've got a second weapon to worry about, you're not having to get exhausted by, you know, the extended posture of the rapier, or worry about these single time counters, as you can focus it down to, you know, mostly daggers defending, rapiers attacking. So yes, single rapier, when they're the large rapier forms of the early 17th century, I think that's the thing that people struggle with one of the most out of the lot.
Cool, guys, that's been absolutely awesome. I'm just gonna wrap it up here. I'm Jordan and Melissa. We're from the Academy of Steel. You can find us at www.academyofsteel.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Nick and Mike, where are you guys?
We're at
that's swordfight.uk, our website, and on YouTube, Academy of Historical Fencing, as well as on Facebook. Yeah, you can find us there.
And just in case you didn't catch who we are, I'm Michael Thomas, and you,
Nick Thomas.
And also, we are your t-shirts we can find. Can you?
Swordfight UK on Redbubble.
Sweet, excellent. And you're also on Instagram now at your Nick TAHF, is that right?
Nick_T_AHF.
I'm on Instagram as well. I am Star Crusader.
I'm going to follow you. I didn't realize you were on Instagram.
And we are on Instagram as...
And Twitter.
The Academy of Steel. We're the Academy of everywhere. We're the Academy of Steel. We thought ahead.
Search for AOS and you'll find us.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Rui.
So Espada Negra is on every front. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everything. And we even have our website. So on Facebook, it's Espada Negra HEMA. Instagram, it's Espada Negra, I believe. I mean, I haven't checked it in a while now. Sorry. The website is espadanegra.club.
Alex.
I am Alex Kraken Swords. That's krakenswords.com, and Kraken Swords on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Nice. And Kraken Swords, just to clarify, that's your club and the swords.
That is my club and my sword making business is Kraken Swords.
Cool.
Excellent. Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for this. This has been awesome, good fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been good to chat to you.
Excellent.